Hello and welcome to PoliticOly. This is episode 6 on April 19th, 2020. I'm your host, Stuart Reed, and you can find us on YouTube and Twitch at PoliticOly, on Twitter at OlyPolitic or at OlyStuart, or catch me on Facebook. And I am going to go ahead and get going with some brief news updates here, and we will go from there. And then at 1:30 we have a audio interview with Andrew Saturn, Socialist, who ran for Public Utility District Commissioner in 2018 in Thurston County, and get an update from him. So to start off with, I just want to say rest in peace to Sonny Quitlong, who passed away, who died from COVID-19 in Seattle. He was a Safeway worker up in Seattle and passed away recently. So rest in peace to Sonny Quitlong. I also wanted to say a quick rest in power to Stone Child Chief Stick, who was murdered by the police on July 23rd, 2019. But his killer was just released from any criminal liability by the court recently. And you can find more information about that. Yeah, sorry about this goofy picture. That's just me blissing out in the sun today. So I hope you guys are getting outside and enjoying the nice day as much as you can under the social distancing circumstances. So, wanted to point you to this article in the Kitsap Sun. So if you search Kitsap Sun, and you can and Stone Child Chief Stick, you can find this and read more about that case. So no justice, no peace in that case at this time. I wanted to talk a little bit about a couple of candidates here in Thurston County and some local Washington state politics. We have Glenda Braillers, who just recently announced she's running for the Washington State House of Representatives for Legislative District 22. And she just did a campaign live stream yesterday, and you can check that out if you search Glenda Braillers on Facebook, and that is GlendaBreiler, and you can find her live stream from yesterday. And you can also, here, let me update this here. You can go to glenda4wa.com to learn more. And I've only been able to watch part of that so far, and I don't know her. I haven't met her personally, so I don't have an opinion on her campaign at this time. I want to hear more and learn more information. But I'm always interested when local folks are running for office, and I want to hear what they're about and what their agenda is and what they're working on. Glenda is a water protector. She's director of the Longhouse Cultural Center at Evergreen State College. And so yeah, go to glenda4wa.com to learn more, as I will be doing myself, and hopefully I will report back in the future with more information about Glenda Braillers' campaign for LD22, which is currently held by Beth Dolio, or I believe that's the seat she's running for. I should double check that, but so we'll update you more about that, and again, check Glenda's Facebook page for that video, and let me know what you think, and let me know if you have participated in water protection actions with Glenda, or you've seen Glenda speak, or anything like that, and you've got an impression of them in their campaign. Let me know what you think in the comments. and I'll report on that back in the future. So moving on, Rory Summerson is running for Thurston County Commission, and he is a progressive Bernie-crat type of campaign. And Rory just started doing, I believe he wants to do a weekly live YouTube stream Saturdays at 4 p.m. So that's another one where I haven't caught that whole show yet. So I'm just linking it to you, and you can check it out and let me know what you think about Rory Summerson's campaign. And we'll talk more about that as we go in this campaign. So you can find Rory on YouTube at Rory Summerson 2020, and check out his recent live stream there from yesterday. And hopefully going forward, there will be more of those as well, and we can learn more about Rory. So let's see. I wanted to talk today about the situation in prisons in the United States in the context of COVID-19. And I've got a few links here for you to take a look at, talk about different aspects of that. So let me get this page updated here. This is on Vimeo. Let's just get this loaded. But and I'll be quiet so you can hear this, and let's just watch this. It's only a couple of minutes long, so let's tune in.
What do we want? Create days! Why do we want it? Save lives! What do we want? Create days! Why do we want it? Save lives! What do we want? Create space! Why do we want it? Save lives! What do we want? Create space! Why do we want it? Save lives!
My son is currently incarcerated at Monroe Correctional Complex, MSU. He is 27, my only son. He's in B unit, and that's where originally started, was in B unit. They are currently sleeping about 2 to 3 feet away from each other. He wants to come home so he can feel safer. If he was to be let out on a ankle bracelet, he would stay home. I mean, we've been quarantined for, a month now. We go to the grocery store, we go, pretty much that's really it. The first case tested positive was almost a month ago. It took them over a month to even get any kind of cleaning supplies, masks, gloves. There is no social distancing at all. They are literally maybe a few feet from each other. And there's not enough testing. There's probably half of the people in there have it. They just don't know they have it.
Save fish! Save lives! Release them all!
What do we want?
Create space!
What do we want?
I mean, even if my son doesn't get to come home, that's fine by me, but create space.
What do we want? Create space! Why do we want it? Save lives!
So in the prison she's talking about, Monroe State Prison, Washington State Prison in Monroe, is a particularly dangerous situation. And the Washington Governor Jay Inslee has so far been pretty weak on protecting the prisoners in Washington State. And we talked about that for the past couple of weeks, and that situation continues. So let the governor know that he needs to be releasing thousands of prisoners and following CDC guidelines in the prisons and making sure that prisoners' constitutional rights are protected. Just because you've been convicted of a crime doesn't mean you deserve a death sentence from a preventable disease. in prison because of inadequate sanitation and other issues that are fixable. So moving on to the next video here, this one is from La Resistencia Northwest, and they are a really good group to follow. So check them out, and we're just going to watch this short video as well from the Northwest Detention Center, or whatever they're calling it now, up in Tacoma, where ICE, it's a private prison run by ICE, and they are housing immigrants there prior to deportation. And these are the conditions right now up in Tacoma at the NWDC. Again, this is from La Resistencia.
We are back outside the Northwest Detention Center in Tacoma, Washington. There's a new group of people who are being detained outside in the yard. I stopped lying about the real condition people want to be immediately released. You can see our recent posts for calls to action, emails, tweets, phone calls to to Natalie Asher, the ICE field office director over here, and also to the governor.
So just a quick look at that, and you can go look at La Resistencia for more video, first-hand accounts from ICE Detention Center in Tacoma, Washington. And I'll just read a little bit of their post here. La Resistencia posts, breaking news, third hunger strike at NWDC starts today. People detained spell SOS with their own bodies. It's time to act to support the hunger strikers. Demand ICE and Governor Inslee, #free them all. What you can do today. Email ICE using the provided template. Call Governor Inslee. Write the hunger striker demands. And you can read more about that and find the link to that template on their page. Moving on, but still on the topic of prisons situation with COVID-19, you can get more information on the situation with ICE detainees from this article here. ICE's COVID-19 test figures hint at health crisis in detention on rollcall.com. And there's some more information down here about that. So go check that out. I'll link to these in the comments when I post this video, the playback on YouTube, so you can find that. Quote, Democrats seem to want to prioritize, blah, blah, blah. You know, they're just, ICE is a white supremacist organization, and they are just using this crisis in order to implement their white supremacist agenda. And so we need to not forget about the folks detained by ICE, even though we are distracted by other situations as well now. One more article I wanted to share with you on the topic has more information about the prison system in Louisiana at Angola State, Louisiana State Penitentiary at Angola, and this is on The Appeal. And I want to highlight this one because I really encourage folks to go to The Appeal, and they have a lot of great articles on legal issues. This is written by Victoria Law, who is an excellent author. And quote, what we're facing right now is a slow-moving disaster. And let's see. Sorry about this. Today's show is kind of casual. I don't really have it all set up to be coming across real professional right now. So we're just hanging out and talking about this, and I'll share the links, and you can check these out and read these articles for more information. But lots of good info in there. And again, Victoria Law for the Appeal is a good author for legal perspectives. Next, I want to move to show talk here about PoliticOly. I want to do a poll each week and hopefully get some feedback from y'all on what we should do with the show and what's working and what you guys want to see. So the poll from last week was, quote, I'm an amateur leftist talk show live streamer, been going for a month now and looking forward with segments and topics people want to see. So which of these topics would you be more likely to click and watch a segment on or jump in the discussion? And Washington state politics won, and local Olympia and Thurston County politics got a strong second place. And so what it sounds like from folks is they want to hear about local politics. And that makes a lot of sense, because if you want to hear about national politics, you got about 1 million news sources for that, right? So, and there's a lot less for local stuff. So, got your message, and I will focus on local politics as much as possible going forward. And I will have another poll up on Twitter this week, so keep an eye out. I'll post that in the description when I post the replay of this episode on YouTube. And so go look in the description below, find the link to the poll, and you can give me some feedback and let me know what you are thinking as well. Because the whole reason I'm doing a live stream instead of pre-recorded show is I'm hoping to get some feedback from folks and some interaction. And so I'd love to hear from you. You can find me on Twitter. I do show updates at PoliticOly, and my personal Twitter is at Oli Stewart, and you can find me on there. Moving on, let's see. Talking about local politics, I wanted to talk for a little bit about Joshua Collins, who's running for the United States House of Representatives in Washington Congressional District 10 to replace Democrat Denny Heck. And I'm a big fan of Joshua Collins. I'm sure you all know who he is. And he's gotten some national attention with his campaign, just unapologetic socialist. He's young, and he is a big TikTok star. And basically is able to is good at political communicating, right? He's good at taking big picture ideas and unapologetic leftism ideology and putting it in meme form and in TikTok form and on Twitter. And so Joshua Collins is running a really important campaign in our district. You can go to joshua2020.com to hear more. But what I wanted to talk about, I have actually a couple things. First of all, he posted on April 13th at Joshua for Congress, quote, "A while back I did an NPR interview. In it, I said if Joe Biden is the nominee, Trump will call him a senile old rapist and landslide him in the general. They didn't air the interview. LOL. The NPR journalists were so nice, though. I told them a story from my past off the record, and the sound lady teared up. She was so sweet. I feel bad that I kind of ruined their piece by giving it that honest answer, but I've never been good at censoring myself. I call it like I see it. This isn't the only time a mainstream outlet has interviewed me and not run the story because of something I said that the establishment wouldn't like. Looking at you, at CNN." So the big news here is just, again, the corporate media censorship. Joshua Collins is a major candidate. He's running a big campaign. He's doing well on fundraising. He has a ton of reach on social media. He's got momentum and energy. He's got good staff. He's got a unionized campaign. um, and the corporate media goes and takes his time for interviews and then doesn't air them. And so that right there is a form of election rigging in itself. And so, not surprised, but dismayed to hear that he had done those interviews and they have just chosen not to air them. So, contact those news organizations and ask them to air those interviews. But the bigger problem is capitalist media and the reliance on capitalist media in our political system, because they are just never going to be an unbiased source of journalism when you have a profit motive involved and folks with capital in the background, hitting that big red button, do not air this interview, if they don't like it. So another tweet from Joshua here is from April 15th. He says, I was pressured to drop out to clear the way for Rep. Beth Dolio. I didn't, and her supporters spent the last 6 months smearing me. I have 9 opponents, and I've only had problem with one candidate's supporters. FFS, the Republicans have been more respectful to me than her supporters. And this is really goes to the issue with politics, where and it's not just even the political parties, but the local politics is a microcosm of the national politics. And what we see in the presidential race nationally is you have these big players behind. Some of them are behind the scenes. Some of them are, in the scenes. You have Obama and, other highly visible folks, and but then you have all these power players behind the scenes, the oligarchs and their lobbyists in the DNC and so on. And you hear from folks sometimes, well, focus on local politics, because if you want to change the Democratic Party, you go to the local level and take over the local party with progressives, and you can be on the platform committee and all this, and I've done these things. But the problem is that the local level is also corrupt in the same way, just on a different scale. But you still have the same mix of some political power players who are very public and highly visible, such as current and former elected officials and party officials. And then you have the behind the scenes players and the people with the money and the connections. And they pick the candidates before the primary ever starts. And they don't tell you about it until you're in the campaign and it's too late to do anything about it. And they go behind the scenes and make all these connections for those candidates. And even if the candidate themselves, and in this case, Beth Dolio, I don't even really want to say anything to against Beth Dolio. I think she earnestly wants to be progressive and help make things better. But what happens is you have this whole political system in the background setting her up as the candidate and trying to clear everyone else out of the way. And it's just completely undemocratic. And so the local Democrats are just a microcosm of the national party in that way. So looks like, let's see, we are a few minutes late on talking to Andrew Saturn. So I'm going to go ahead and switch over and let's see. All right. Andrew, are you in the chat?
Yeah, hey, how's it going?
All right. Okay, I think we are working here now. So sorry for being a few minutes late here. Yeah, so hang on one moment. Hopefully folks that are tuned in can hear your audio. and we are good to go, and let's just go forward. So, everyone, this is Andrew Saturn. Andrew ran for Public Utility District Commissioner in Thurston County in 2018. He is a socialist, and I will let you, Andrew, go ahead and give yourself a little bit more of an introduction and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm a writer, I'm a designer, I'm a union tech worker, formerly at Boeing under SPEA. Boeing laid a bunch of people off recently, if you didn't know. I post a lot on the internet, and as you said, I'm a former candidate. In 2018, I ran for Public Utilities Commissioner, and I'm now the treasurer of Puget Sound Socialist Party. And we also have a podcast called Socialism Train, where we talk about socialism and trains mainly.
Yeah, awesome. So where would people go to find your new podcast?
Just on Twitter right now, at Socialism Train. PSSP.us is our party website. We don't have a website for the podcast just yet. Same as you, we're new to this.
Yeah.
I'm very technical, but audio is a little tricky sometimes, as you've figured out.
Yes.
We have some podcasts recorded, but
awesome,
because of our newness to audio recording and producing, have had some audio quality issues and glitches. So when I say we, I mean me, trying to work that out and produce something that's at least acceptable quality for people. But we should have a couple new episodes coming out tonight or tomorrow. But yeah, it's podcasting, I think, is pretty cool in that you can share your ideas without having to type it all out. A lot of times I think these days people don't want to spend a lot of time reading something. But if you're, commuting, you're on the bus or a train or even driving, you can listen to a podcast and it's more digestible. Same goes with video content, I think. So it's good to see a lot of people, especially on the left, socialists or progressives or whatever, branching out into podcasting. And, I think the arena is kind of dominated by more of a center-right voice or even a right-wing voice. If you look at more traditional, like radio, stuff like that. Or even just more consumerist stuff like sports or whatever. So it's really cool, in my opinion, to see some more regular working people get into it.
Yeah, definitely. I was just talking about earlier, I had a poll on what I should do with the channel, and folks seem all about local content. And that makes a lot of sense because you got about 1 million content producers talking about national stuff. And a lot less about local stuff, especially from a leftist perspective in a lot of areas.
Yeah, you have so few people talking about, specifically in Olympia, not just Olympia politics, but the state, Washington's politics happening in Olympia. No one's really talking about it from a left perspective. There are a few podcasts hosted by people who are literally lobbyists or, op-ed writers for the Olympian or something like that, but they're sharing their pretty center-right opinion and just kind of acting as if that's as far left as you can go in Olympia. But I think there's so much room to go, more talking about working class issues and talking about it from a materialist point of view than more of a kind of the typical thing you'll see on the furthest left in a podcast at this level is someone talking about your run-of-the-mill Democratic talking points. So,
right. I just pulled up on the video here your Socialism Train account here, and I'm just clicking over to PSSP webpage. You want to tell folks a little bit about Puget Sound Socialist Party? What's the background there? When did that start? And tell me a little bit about Puget Sound Socialist Party.
So officially, it was founded a few years ago as a chartered local of the Socialist Party, which is, that dates back 100 years, the Socialist Party, with Eugene Debs and people like that. But here in Washington State specifically, it's as far back as like early 1900s again, but people don't realize it's pretty much the same party. And there was a split in the 70s where we had Socialist Party USA come out of one side, more kind of what I would call like a traditional socialist, whether that's Marxism or whatever, more of electoral party. And then the other side of that was Democratic Socialists of America, which isn't a party. It's more of a membership organization, and they have more of a focus on whatever you want to call it, like an inside-outside strategy. So they work more along the lines of endorsing Democrats.
Right.
So, your AOCs or Bernie Sanders, whereas we don't do that. We're strictly socialist. We don't endorse Democrats.
Right. Am I correct? I believe the Socialist Party nationally has endorsed Howie Hawkins, the Green candidate. Do you know if that's right?
No, that's true. Yep.
That's
Howie
the same
Hawkins,
Socialist Party
yep.
that this is affiliated with? Okay.
Gotcha. Yep. Howie Hawkins is running in most places on the Green Party ballot,
right?
Because it's, you have access to the state ballot that way. But he is a socialist. He's specifically an eco-socialist. Right. He was one of the early founders of the Green Party. He invented the Green New Deal, that whole concept. I could talk more about Howie Hawkins if you'd like, specifically.
Sure. What do you think his prospects are in terms of building the Green Party into to continue growing and building a coalition there?
Pretty good. It's always going to be a struggle for working people to take on the corporate duopoly of the Republicans and the Democrats, because even though they play this game of, we're totally different. They're the red team, we're the blue team. In reality, they're the exact same thing. They always fight for the exact same thing, and that's corporate control and wealth. They fight for capital. They don't fight for working people. The Green Party traditionally has been more in line with like DSA, where they tend to support Democrats who are environmentally conscious. But what I've seen personally since at least, Bernie Sanders getting into the race and Jill Stein back in 2015, 2016, you're seeing more of a leftist attitude within the Green Party. And Howie Hawkins being one of the founders, he's always been a socialist. And I think there's always been a branch of the Green Party that's been socialist. But seeing the Green Party move more in a direction of outright calling themselves an eco-socialist party.
I believe they do now, right? They had a resolution a few years ago.
Yep. And I think that's exciting because, much like the Socialist Party, they are a party. It's not just an organization.
Right.
So they can get on the ballot and run candidates. And in many cases, the Green Party has ballot access because they're getting, 5, 6, 7% of the vote in a presidential election. So they can get their candidates on the ballot in states where you have to have ballot access to get on the ballot for your party. Right. Here in Washington, we don't technically have parties. We're a nonpartisan state officially. So you can put anything you want when you run for office. You can put, party time party or whatever, and the Secretary of State will accept it.
All you need to do to know that is read any of the voter guides in any of our general elections, and shout out to your Twitter handle,
Bad Space Guy,
right? Because
the perennial candidate,
Washington
Good Space Guy.
Voters who have read those pamphlets know where that's from.
Good Space Guys are perennial candidate up in Seattle who runs on who knows what, kind of a libertarian, kind of a right-wing platform, but he, for better or for worse, runs every year for something. The closest he's come to getting elected was getting about a third of the vote for the Port of Seattle, which was pretty frightening.
Pretty good. I think maybe this is a good time to just really briefly mention Howie Hawkins' campaign Twitter account was recently suspended.
They said he was impersonating himself.
Which really just says, well, we just consider you like a lowly peasant, and you're not worthy of our time to really review what's going on here with your campaign, and
I think
treating you like an actual candidate,
I think the mask is off in terms of Twitter.
Sure.
The
Yeah.
people who run Twitter are very much, they donate to very corporate interests, Koch brothers and stuff like that. They often will do this sort of thing where they're like, oops, we accidentally banned the leftist account. Meanwhile, you've got people on the right who are posting threats and racist tweets and all kinds of crazy stuff, and they're verified. And it's almost, it's an endorsement of whatever they're posting. And I mean, if you want to get crazy, the president, like, he's tweeting all this crazy stuff. He's retweeting posts from literal Nazis and literal,
the same Twitter where Trump is trying to incite civil war.
Right. They're shutting down. Yeah, exactly.
It's ridiculous. So
there's another podcast that's pretty cool called What's Left. And one of the hosts, Amy Therese, was banned from Twitter for posting, "We have to beat Elizabeth Warren." And they said that she was inciting violence, but she meant electorally, like beat her in an election in the primary.
Yeah.
So it's just stupid, because then other people posted, "We have to beat, whoever," and those people didn't get banned. So it's like, who?
Yeah, it's always inconsistent, and a lot of times, just it's a vector for, implicit bias and
exactly
things like that.
It's a gatekeeping mechanism.
I'll say something, FTP or something like that, and I'll never hear a word about it. But other people are getting banned for posting the exact same thing, but they're black or whatever.
Right.
And,
well, and I mean,
it's always inconsistent.
I think you could be like the devil's advocate and say, well, it's the algorithm, and people are just abusing the algorithm, and you have whatever you want to call it, brigading or whatever, where you've got 50, 100, 200 people reporting the person at the same time, and then it overloads the algorithm. Right. And then the algorithm assumes it must be correct because all these random people are doing it, even though they're organizing elsewhere, whether it's a chat room or Reddit or whatever. But at the same time,
especially now with COVID-19, right? Because you have all these warnings on YouTube and so forth saying, oh, by the way, we don't have any staff looking at this right now. So just sorry, the robot's word is the final word.
But what I'm getting at is, like, you can make that defense of Twitter and say, it's just the robot doing it. But how come the robot never does that for right-wing people or corporate people or verified accounts or anything when these people are posting insane stuff?
The algorithm is also a vector for implicit bias of the people who write the algorithm, of course.
Yeah. The guy who founded McAfee, the antivirus company.
Yeah.
He's widely known as kind of a kook. He says crazy stuff all the time. He's on Twitter. He's verified. It was, I don't know, a month ago. He posted this just blatantly racist thing about, like, black women are all like this or something. Like, he, just like some kind of crazy blanket statement. It was up for weeks before someone brought it up to the founder of Twitter, like face to face. And he was like, oh, I'll look into that. And then they forced him to delete the tweet. He didn't get banned from Twitter. He just had to delete that one tweet. So it's, the rules only apply to certain people. And that goes for both on Twitter and in person. I think you have,
right, of course.
The rules were designed not to make things fair for everybody, but to keep the playing field unlevel. So, you'll always see that. I think the only solution there, not to get off on a tangent, but
go for it.
We're never going to have fairness or democracy with a lowercase d on social media, because these platforms are invented to sell ads. So these are ad platforms.
Yep.
They're not there for you. They're there for corporations. Same goes for like the local news or the national news. They're never going to be fair to a certain politician that you like, because they're not there to be fair and share the news. They're there to sell ads. And those ads are going to stop rolling in the minute they start being fair, because those corporations who buy those ads don't want those politicians to be getting coverage. And I think as soon as, regular working people starts to click, you just got to get your information from a source that you trust, that isn't bought. And unfortunately, to get that sort of exposure, you need to use these platforms. So it's just this sort of, catch-22 where you can't ever do it. So we've got to find a way to have our own platforms that aren't corporate dominated.
Yeah,
for
absolutely. I was
selling
just
on.
thinking about that the other day on Twitter with because just social media in general, not just the media, but also just social media, and everybody, it's really, people have tried to get folks on a independent social media site in mass, but it's just really hard.
Yeah. You'll
And
never be able to
because you
force
just get
someone.
the critical mass on Facebook and so on, and then it's so hard to fight that momentum with the independent platform. So I don't know what the solution is, but I feel like that is just a critical part of the political revolution that has been often overlooked.
Yeah, I mean, there's
I don't know what the
platforms like
answer is.
Mastodon or whatever,
Right, but how
but I
do you?
think
Yeah,
it's hard to use. There's a really steep learning curve,
sure.
and it doesn't make sense to a lot of people because it's decentralized. But
Right.
and I mean, it's the other side of that is, does social media even matter in terms of
Sure.
getting a message out? Because I've got 3,000 followers on Facebook and I'm verified on Facebook, but people never see my posts.
Right.
The algorithm magically keeps them hidden from people. Or you look at a candidate like Josh Collins, who's running for the 10th congressional district.
Mm-hmm.
He's got thousands of followers. I don't even know at this point, tens of thousands. But will that translate into
Let
votes
me pull
and
it up.
support?
Let's see where he's at.
But my point there is, like, are his votes, or I'm sorry, are his posts and his message actually reaching voters that will vote in his district?
Right.
Like, does that actually translate? And I saw that in my campaign. We had thousands of supporters online, but that didn't necessarily translate to your everyday regular working person.
Right. And obviously the big example hanging over everyone right now with that is Bernie Sanders, because he had this massive movement. He had record-breaking number of volunteers on the phones and door knocking. He had DSA door knocking. He had huge social media leads over all the other candidates. And then who does he lose to? He loses to Joe Biden, the guy that doesn't even campaign, who doesn't know how to use social media, who doesn't know how to live stream. Like, how?
Well, Joe Biden didn't even have a campaign office in California.
Right. So, yeah, oof.
And I think what you see there is you've got these like patronage networks. Same thing happened in my campaign, where you do all this work on the ground, you knock on all the doors, you make all the phone calls, but your opponent will spend $50,000 sending a postcard 3 days before the election, and the person who doesn't have the time to dedicate to spending, researching the election is going to get that postcard, and it says all these good things on it. And, they get called low information voters, but I think what they are is just like, they don't have the time. They're busy working. It's not a thing where they're not doing enough.
I agree with that. Yeah.
It's that who has the time? We have the time because we're lucky, whether we have a good enough job or we have a good work-life balance. Most people don't have a normal 40-hour week. They have, their schedules all over the place. They're working 60 hours a week, 2 jobs, who knows? And then they've got to do childcare. They've got to do
Been there, done that.
this other crap. Right.
Yeah,
they don't have time to sit on the internet and research Bernie Sanders' position on every little thing and then compare that to the 30 other candidates who are running and decide who they think they'll vote for. And then on top of that, say you do have this mass support, whether they want to admit it or not, there's still screwed up elections happening, whether it's downright fraud, which I don't think happens so much. I don't think they're literally not counting the votes. I think it's just they're so bad at their jobs. The counting machines may not be calibrated correctly. They may be set up wrong. Not even that so much as the just disenfranchisement, where you've got states where, under coronavirus, you're expecting people to go stand in line for 7 hours. That's insane. Yeah. Even if we didn't have a pandemic going on right now, same issue. The people who are working 60 hours a week don't have time to go stand in line. They don't have time to, often, even if in a state like Washington with your mail-in ballot, people forget. I've had normal friends of mine who, they're kind of political. They have really good opinions on things, but they get their ballot, they throw it on the table, and then a week goes by, 2 weeks go by, they totally forget. And then it's election day and they're like, oh crap, And And then
Oh,
it's like, well,
absolutely.
I've got to go work and I don't get off work till 9 p.m. When am I going to have time to go fill out this ballot and then go find a drop box? So we've
Right.
got,
Or,
you
hey,
know,
I moved 3 times this year, and I don't remember which one I'm registered to, and I forgot to update it.
exactly. I have friends who are political. They moved. They did update their voter registration. Their ballot never showed up. They reached out to the Secretary of State. They said, oh, you have to come down to Olympia in
Right.
person with your ID and fill out this form to get your ballot, which may or may not be counted because it's a special ballot. It's provisional.
Provisional ballots.
It's
Yeah.
insane. There's no reason voting should be this hard. So I think, like I
Right.
said, to circle back to like Bernie's massive support, not necessarily translating to votes, I think you've got those factors. And then you've got, you know, like in the South, for example, you've got these patronage networks where they have, you know, someone makes a phone call like Barack Obama, and suddenly you've got 100, 200, 1,000 people on the ground going and knocking on doors saying, you know, vote for Joe Biden because he's the guy the Democrats are supporting. And these same thing, the people who don't have the time to go research are going to go, oh, I trust this guy. He told me
Yeah.
to vote for Joe Biden. So even though Bernie's reaching these people, Bernie doesn't have that establishment support that can go and make things happen.
And, you know, the capitalist Democrats needed a boost this time. So, you know, hey, Michael Bloomberg,
Right. No, I mean,
hook
you've
us
got,
up.
yeah.
And he did. And, you know.
Well, that was even going back to before the election. There were people who were maybe critical of Bloomberg, and suddenly they get a check from Bloomberg for their, you know, nonprofit or whatever, and then that criticism magically disappears. So it's, you know, it's always going to be this uphill battle, and I think it's got to click one day that you're not going to, you can't. I've always said it's like, this is like a dumb nerd reference, but you're not going to reform the empire from the inside. Like, you're not gonna, it's one thing to, like, you know, you have the Rebel Alliance and they go shoot the Death Star, right? It would be like saying, like, no, we need to join and become stormtroopers, and then we can convince all the stormtroopers to, like, that's stupid. That's never going to happen. There are these people in the party who are just like ride or die. They're in it for the money and the clout. They're not in it because they have a belief system. So you're never going to convince these people. As long as there's money and there's corporate influence, they're never going to just, you know, have a deep moment where they realize that they're doing these terrible things, because they don't connect it. They don't care. The people at the top, they don't care. They're getting paid. So it's not personal. It's just that they're living their lives. So we really got to have a mass worker movement. And I think, again, to circle back to the Green Party stuff, if that's through the Green Party, that's great. You know, Shama Solan up in Seattle always says we need to have like a green-red alliance when it comes to socialism and environmentalists and workers, even like a blue, green, red, whatever you want to call it.
Sure.
All these people
seems
really
like
need to realize.
The groundwork for that is there now.
Well, it's always been there. I just think it's that people don't. You're being fed this idea. We have the numbers. I think it's that people are fed this. You've got idealism versus materialism, you know? So you can be on the left or whatever. But if you're an idealist and you think our circumstances are caused by our ideas and the way we think and the words we use, that's just this stupid kind of dead end way of thinking, where they split up the working class into these different little categories. And then these little categories fight against each other. So, you know, all the way back to civil rights movement, you had feminists and then you had black people fighting for rights, right? But they were fighting different fights. Even though those fights were the same fight, there were people who had to choose between being a feminist and then being in the civil rights movement. So you'd often have this clash, and, you know, you're basically just dividing your resources. So I don't want to get on this huge rant about all that stuff, but it's, you know, like you look at Martin Luther King, when he was getting into talking about workers' rights and sanitation workers' rights, that's when he really started getting the threats on his life, because he started becoming such a huge threat, uniting all of these working people together, because, you know, the black struggle is the women's struggle, is the working class struggle. It's all the same struggle. Unless you're a millionaire or billionaire, you know, you're working class. And so it's really got to be a class materialist struggle going forward. And people I just really hope people start to get it. You're not going to get anywhere supporting someone like Joe Biden or Elizabeth Warren because they're always going to default to the corporate, center right politics of the Democratic Party and the Republican Party.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, no, I think we're on the same page on all that. What? Anything else you want to talk about here?
Oh, I don't know. I didn't know how much time you had. I mean, I can talk all day.
Sure. Yeah. I mean,
I'm excited about a bunch of campaigns coming up. Like I said, Joshua Collins.
Yep.
I hope his Twitter following translates to support. Rebecca Parsons running on ending homelessness.
Yep.
She's running. I believe she's running as a Democrat as well, not a socialist. She says she's like a working class business owner, so I'm not sure. But much like AOC, if that's like the gateway to get people into working class politics, then I'm all for it.
Right.
And I mean, I'll take that any day over, say a right winger or whatever, who's going to just, get into Congress and do these goofy wedge issues about abortion and immigration and whatever.
Yeah.
And I hope, this whole coronavirus thing is scaring a lot of people. But luckily, it was announced, I believe today, Washington State unemployment is extended by I don't know what it was. Let me look really quick here. It was an extra 13 weeks, and people are going to get an extra $600 a week, and they no longer have to keep a journal of their job search. So there's longer. Yeah, okay. There's no longer that qualification of like a means test. You just, you don't have a job, here's money.
Yeah, which is how it should be. Anyone
Exactly.
who's gone through unemployment, it knows it's it's a headache. Like you've got a pile of forms, and then you forgot to sign one form, so now you've got a whole half hour on hold and some more forms and.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So the extra 13 weeks is definitely going to help a bunch of people.
Right.
That's an extra, give or take it a few days. That's an extra 3 months over the normal 26 weeks of benefits you get on unemployment, depending on how long you worked.
Right. And there's been some updates recently to the housing situation in Washington too. Still obviously way weaker than what we need. And everyone should go pressure Jay Inslee to do a rent freeze and to cancel rent. But there have been some updates recently. I think so there was a rent increase freeze. Landlords
they need to just cancel rent and mortgages.
Some things like that. But yeah, so keep the pressure on Jay Inslee to do more on housing, because it seems like he has been feeling the pressure and is trying to kind of throw people a bone, but
I don't think it's enough though, honestly.
Oh,
I think it might be easier reaching out to people who have regulatory authority, like the insurance commissioner. The insurance commissioner can cancel insurance requirements. He can cancel copays and deductibles. He can cancel.
Interesting. I hadn't thought about that.
The insurance commissioner regulates the insurance industry for the state, right, and has the authority to just blanket say, I'm capping all monthly premiums to $100. He has that authority.
Right.
And I really wish this isn't going to be over in a month or 2 months. This is going to be the rest of this year at the very least, if not at this time next year.
Yeah.
Like we're looking at, this is going to be like a thing where it's like it's Corona season, much like the flu. And even after we have a vaccine, like it's going to be this recurring thing. And this is just one virus. Like this isn't the end of pandemics. We've had them for thousands of years, and they're not going away. The only difference now is we have modern medicine. So I really hope our elected and appointed officials really use their authority to help working people, because the working people are the ones who are out buying things and sustaining the economy. When they don't have money to buy stuff, the economy crashes, everything tumbles. So I really, there's some people who are accelerationist and want that to happen. I don't think that's really a great idea. I really just, like I said,
Yeah,
what they did with
I
unemployment
agree.
is a good first step.
I think, folks that are interested in politics really need to be careful not to be throwing anybody under the bus.
Right. I mean, you've got, it's a great idea for a movie, but in reality,
so
you're talking about millions of people dying is really what that means. So I really, like I said, I like that we're getting, at least in Washington State, people who are unemployed right now are going to get some extra money. They're going to be able to make their rent because they haven't canceled rent for some reason yet. But I really, like I said, hope it goes further. I've got myself, I have insurance to pay. My premium is like $500 a month, basically. So this extra money is really going to help cover those bills. So
yeah,
it's a good first step. But I hope everyone out there stays safe and washes their hands. Try not to cough on people. Yeah.
And then you have this protest at the Capitol today.
Oh, geez.
And I haven't gone into that. I haven't looked up how that ended up going, because you never know with these right wingers. Like sometimes they've got 10,000 people RSVP'd on Facebook, and then 5 of them show up and then get chased off. But you never know.
Did you see that it was called Liberty or Death Rally? And I was pretty much like, well, you're going to get one of those things, but not the other. But yeah, it's and I'm a socialist. I support gun rights. I'm in the Socialist Rifle Association.
Mm-hmm.
No one's going to take your guns away. This is about like people not dying. So anyone who's listening, who's maybe not, on the left or whatever, this coronavirus thing. There's this idea that like the government is shutting things down and it's like the New World Order and blah, blah, blah. Like they're doing the bare minimum. They're not even doing enough.
Yeah.
If you really think this is bad, like just imagine what it would be like if they were doing a good job.
Right.
No one's taking anyone's guns away.
There's so much fear mongering over socialism.
It's not even socialism, though.
No,
it's
exactly.
It's basic safety net.
And in the brainwashing train of thought, though, it's
they
just
conflate
like
liberalism and socialism.
The farther to the left you go, the more authoritarian.
Oh.
And and that's just, we need to be clear about where we're at on that. Is
there's an article on our website.
Left.
There's an article on our website, and it's literally just called "What is Socialism?" And it talks about snowplows are not socialism.
Right.
The things the government
does.
There's
a ton of that. That whole meme of like.
Socialism
for the rich when we give them a tax break.
No, that's welfare for the rich.
What that is.
Yeah. No, it's not. Socialism is worker ownership and control of the means of production, which translates to basically you and me have a say democratically in what goes on in our lives. So that means, worker co-ops or actual democratic control of the government.
Which is by definition democratic and anti-authoritarian.
Right. Lowercase d democratic.
Right.
So that doesn't mean snowplows. That doesn't mean, roads. That doesn't mean trains. That can translate into those things because when working people have democratic control, they tend to want to do basic public services and public good. And, it's not... Thomas Paine was like a founding father of this country, and he advocated for the public commons, public good. That doesn't mean socialism. So it's actually crazy because Thomas Paine is this, at least seen as this like right wing kind of liberty or death kind of figure. But he wrote The Rights of Man, and he wrote like this pamphlet that talked about basically a modest proposal. Which people should look up. These are crazy leftist ideas by that time standard. So for people today to say like, oh, snowplows are socialism, like, no, that's not socialism. That's just the bare minimum of doing what should be done by a government. That's what a government does. That's what living in a modern society means. It just means, it works. The system works if all of our sewers are connected. That's really all it means. It's crazy to me that there are people who think, not living like the Unabomber in a shed out in the woods makes you some kind of like socialist. So I don't know. That's a whole separate episode. You could go down that route. But I really think there's an opportunity to talk to what you would consider like a right winger or a Trump supporter, because there's a lot of overlap in the ideas, I think, of what it means to be free or to have liberty or whatever. Where I think right wingers have their own kind of identity politics, where they have a flawed analysis of what the solution to our everyday problems means, and they see it as these dumb there are wedge issues on the left and there are wedge issues on the right that are used to divide up the working class, in my opinion. And I think if you take all of that dumb stuff away, that accounts for like 1% to 2% of people's opinions. It's pretty much the same ideas, right and left amongst the working class. People just want to have a comfortable living. They want to take care of their kids. They want to feed their kids. They want to be happy and safe and basic stuff like that.
Don't want to be ruled by corruption.
Yeah. And the difference is on the right, they're brainwashed or led to believe this identity politics of, there's a socialist plot to take away your guns and, to take away your house and to take away your car. And it's not a socialist plot. That's the corporate plot.
Right. Yeah. And that's how I try to frame that conversation as well, is that, with libertarian leaning folks and things like that, is that the reality is that who has the big power right now is these oligarchs and their corporations and whatnot. And how are you what's your strategy for fighting them? And what are you going to do except for socialism that is able to fight those corporations and those oligarchs? What's your other plan? Because I don't see it. And that's why we need the socialism, is because we got to go fight those extremely powerful oligarchs. And
all socialism means is workers uniting to have collective power. It doesn't mean we take your toothbrush away.
Right.
Like people conflate personal property and private property. Under socialism, there wouldn't be private property. You wouldn't have corporations like Nestle going into California and buying up acres of land and siphoning off all the water into bottles. Right. That doesn't mean you personally wouldn't have your land with your well on it and your family and you could do whatever you want. Yeah. And I think that basic stuff like that is just, again, we can go off on a whole episode talking about that stuff, but I think there's ground to cover and kind of talking to right-wing people, especially Trump supporters, who see Trump as the way or the solution to these problems, when they're being led by this demagogue who just is taking advantage of prejudice or whatever, things that they're also being told are the problem. And labeling these people as deplorable and just saying they're dumb and uneducated only reinforces those ideas. So I think there's a lot to be said about leftists and right-wing people who are working class coming together on the things they agree about. So I'm not saying we should go take over the Republican Party or the Libertarians or whatever, but there's a lot of overlap amongst a lot of regular working people and their ideas.
If we focus on class consciousness and class solidarity.
Exactly. Instead of this identity thing, because the identity thing, everyone's got a different identity, a different thing they believe on these little tiny issues. But overall, most people believe in the exact same things. Right. So what I'm saying is, you're never gonna, even on the left, you've got dozens and dozens of different ideas. Often these disparate ideas that don't make any sense. I've had people tell me when I was running for office, "Oh, I'd support you, except I think you're going to raise taxes because you talked about how you think we should have light rail coming into Olympia, and look at what happened in Pierce County, where basically talking about Tim Eyman stuff and talking about car tabs." And I'm like, and this is someone who's also a Bernie supporter. Right. So it's just, you're never going to have anyone agree on all of the things all the time. You got to focus on the things you can agree on. And I think that's working class
and especially in the context of what we're trying to do now, I guess, right? If we're trying to build like a major left coalition party, out of the Green Party, we're dealing with that, because there's people have an idea of what the Green Party is and who's been involved, and maybe quibbling over this little issue or that little issue, and we really need to refocus it on the big picture and find the common ground and focus on that. And we're just going to constantly have to refocus on that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying basically you can't focus on these identity issues or these kind of more liberal kind of talking points. Those are, whether it's intentional or not, they're designed to divide people up. And when people are divided up, they get very, tribal or sectarian or whatever you want to call it. And you just have a million little groups who are never going to work together. If you focus on these class issues, most people are working class. Most people don't get paid enough. Most people can't make rent sometimes, or are living paycheck to paycheck, or are one emergency away from going bankrupt. That's the things. And I think Bernie's campaign, when he focused on that stuff, is really when he took off. When he started talking about open borders and, more identity-based issues that are very unclear, and he started talking about just these vague concepts, is really when he started to lose a lot of people. And I'm not saying that's what caused him to lose. Like I said, I think it had more to do with the rigging of the elections, forcing people to go out and vote. Like, I think that's why he dropped out. He didn't want people to literally go stand in line.
Right.
Bernie Sanders didn't want people to die so he could become president.
And he saw that the other campaign was,
they're willing to sacrifice people. Exactly.
Right.
But what I'm getting at is, I think if Bernie he's a figure, but his ideas can apply to anybody. Right. We don't need one figure or one person to lead us into, whatever you want to call it. Eugene Debs said, if you can be let in, you can be let out again. You need to lead yourself. So I think the big thing is education. And I think the big thing for that is having a party that is focused on working class issues, whether that is the Green Party or the Socialist Party or, whatever, some other organization, some new party that gets formed. That's really, I think, the key to at least winning elections and winning over, winning, what am I getting at? Victories for working people.
Yeah.
Getting these changes we need, it may not be electoral. It may be literally, getting people organized. Because you look at like the 70s, we had Black Panthers, feeding children and sheltering people, stuff like that. They didn't do that by winning elections or by convincing a city council to do something. They did it by organizing and just doing it. And I think organization is really the key to educate the people and empower the people.
Yeah. So
whether that's through a party or whatever, that's really what I think is key. And I think Bernie started that, at least in these, past 10-year time span for a lot of people, millennials, whatever. But it's never going to be done by just a one figure kind of person. So absolutely. Bernie dropping out shouldn't be the end of this. I think people should empower themselves in their community. Phase. Right.
Yep.
But you can't wait for one person. And I think a lot of people are making the mistake of saying, well, who do we support now? And it's like, it's not about one person.
Right.
So go support Howie Hawkins, whatever. But Howie isn't going to win. Sorry to break it to people.
Right.
But Howie can continue a movement. Other people can continue a movement. It's about a movement. It's about
right.
The idea. Yeah.
Yeah. And uniting the class consciousness, and then also, of course, the demographic shifts over time, and and being prepared for that change, because the younger generations are pretty radical, and things are changing, and
well, I'm a millennial technically, I think.
Yeah, me too.
And we're the first generation to not have it better than our parents.
Right.
And then, you've got the generation after us, Zoomers or whatever, the younger people coming up now through high school and college. And these are people who have grown up with, a more sophisticated internet information at their fingertips, even more so than we had. Because our generation, when we were younger, there was no Google.
Right.
So these kids are growing up now. They've got Google. They've got all this stuff, and they're seeing what we're seeing, and they're even more radical than we are. So I think things are going to get worse, but things are going to get better in a way that people are going to be more empowered, more educated, and more radical when it comes to stuff.
Yeah. Well, that's a good note to end on, I think. And so, yeah, I think we'll go ahead and wrap this up. But I really appreciate you coming on and just chatting. And
thanks for having me.
I've got your Twitter here, so listeners, you can go follow Andrew on Twitter at Bad Space Guy. Check out at Socialism Train as well, the podcast. I listened to the first episode the other day. It's pretty good. I'll keep an eye on that. And
like I said, we have 2 coming out because we had to fix a bunch of audio glitches, so they're late, but they're both going to be at the same time.
So go check out Socialism Train, and hopefully we can do this again sometime in the future. And check out Puget Sound Socialist Party as well.
Yeah, we're on Twitter as well. Puget SPUSA, I believe.
Right. And I'll put some links in the comments when I post the replay video here on YouTube.
Cool.
All right. Well, thanks, Andrew, and have a good one.
You too.
All right. Later. All right, everybody. So yeah, thanks for tuning in. And didn't quite get to all the stories and things I had today. Bit unorganized here, but we'll come back next week. So drop a comment. Let me know what you want to talk about next week. Let me know what's going on. Send me memes. Send me links to articles. Send me music or a local craft or anything you want me to share on the stream, anything like that, just let me know. And thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you all next week. Love and peace.